All right, our next item on the agenda is Senate Bill 297. Senator McKell, I'm showing as first substitute online, so you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me give you a preview of what we're going to do today, and I want to just set an expectation so you know who is going to be presenting with me. I am actually going to welcome Amanda from Intermountain. Amanda is the Administrative Director of Intermountain Primary Children's Hospital, and I'm going to invite her to present with me. After that, I'm going to have two additional presenters. Alan Mortenson, who is an attorney here in Utah, has represented some victims in congregate care. And online, if staff can look for Katy Silvers, she is the mother of Biruk Silvers, who died in a congregate care program. I have three members of the public here that would like to testify as well. They have flown in from out of state. I have Finn Poole, survivor, Dean Goodridge, father of Taylor Goodridge, Caroline Lorson, survivor, Levin Media Impact Team. And I'm going to say Amanda's last name wrong, so I'm going to let her introduce herself. But let me just make some quick comments. So we do have a substitute. Chair Weiler, some of your concerns we tried to address in that substitute. I want to continue to work on that language and make sure we do have it right. I understand that there were some concerns. But in 2021, we passed Senate Bill 127. That was actually passed by myself and then Representative Brammer. And the idea was to add oversight and prevent abuse in congregate care facilities. It was an important step forward, but we're still not done. Since the passage of Senate Bill 127, there have been at least 7 deaths in Utah congregate care facilities. Many of these deaths were preventable. We've also seen a concerning trend. Children from these facilities are being sent to Intermountain for mental health treatment. These facilities claim to specialize in mental health care, but if kids are being sent to primary children's care for help, there's a clear disconnect. So key provisions of the bill that we'll talk about today, what we create first and foremost is an advisory committee with expertise. And you'll see that in the language. That includes a medical doctor, that includes a psychiatrist, that includes 4 different counselors with that type of appropriate licensure with experience, that includes a member of the public. We also create a congregate care ombudsman. I think that's helpful, and you'll see an explanation of why that could be helpful through the testimony. We also create some whistleblower protections. We also enhance safety standards for congregate care programs. Fifth, we provide additional training and protection for children. And finally, we create responsibility for payment to healthcare facilities. With that, I'd like to go through my presentation and turn some time over to Amanda. Following Amanda, Alan Mortenson will be part of my presentation, and then again, Katy Silvers with 3 members of the public. So
Senator, if you want the 3 members of the public to testify, I would suggest you do that as part of your presentation. Because,
I'll do that.
Yeah, for obvious reasons. All right, Amanda, can you tell us your full name since Senator McKell can't pronounce it?
For sure. Hi, my name is Amanda Chaudrey, and I'm the hospital.
That's not that hard, is it?
I was going to say it wrong.
All right, Amanda, and who are you with?
I'm the hospital president for Primary Children's Taylorsville campus, which is our behavioral health facility. I'm representing Primary Children's Hospital today.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee members. And thank you, Senator McKell, for sponsoring this bill and addressing this important issue. From Primary Children's, our main concern is ensuring we keep the very limited resource in our state of pediatric behavioral health inpatient beds available for Utah's kids. Recently, Primary Children's took care of an out-of-state patient who was transported to Utah for residential treatment and ended up living in our hospital for 5 months. She was literally stuck, occupying a bed for over 150 days. Our average length of stay for a Utah kid is 7 days. That means that we delayed or denied treatment for 22 Utah kids during the time this one out-of-state kid lived with us in the hospital. This type of situation not only impacts Utah's kids, but it also negatively impacts out-of-state kids who know that they are stuck living in the hospital. And this situation is not unique. Primary Children's operates 3 inpatient pediatric behavioral health units, totaling 53 beds. Every day, we have a wait list for beds. In total, last year, we took care of 169 out-of-state kids at Primary Children's. That equated to 1,677 bed days occupied by out-of-state patients. And the average length of stay for an out-of-state patient is 30% longer than a kid from Utah. So that adds up to 18 kids a month from Utah who could have been served by spots occupied by out-of-state kids. And taking care of out-of-state patients for behavioral health is especially challenging. Not only did taking care of these 169 out-of-state patients occupy limited beds, but their situations create undue burden on our system. They're more likely to have extended stays. Out-of-state kids are more likely to be covered by Medicaid. They're more likely to have behavioral escalations that lead to injuries in our hospitals. They're less likely to have parental visits during their hospitalization and parental involvement, and they're unable to access any of the local, state, or county mental health services in Utah because they're not Utah residents, and in their home state because they're not physically located in their home state. We understand and recognize the congregate care industry exists to help kids. However, it's our responsibility to make sure the organizations bringing behaviorally complex children to Utah don't place undue burden on Utah's hospitals, emergency departments, and mental health system, delaying and denying mental health access for Utah's kids. So for this reason, we ask that you support SB 297.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mortenson?
Before we go to Mr. Mortenson, would it be okay if I pass out a packet to committee members?
Yeah, just give it to Lacey. We'll have Lacey pass
Yeah,
it on.
sorry, I forgot.
Or you can give it to Daryl. Thank you. Mr. Mortenson has come ready for court.
Thank you, Chairperson Weiler, members of the committee. I'm here.
You'll have to tell us your name, I'm sorry.
I'm Alan Mortenson. I'm an attorney here in Salt Lake City. I represent several people who have been hurt or have passed away in congregate care facilities. I'm here asking you to put that part of my practice out of business because this has been a huge tragedy of what's going on. I'm here in strong support of Senate Bill 297, a bill that provides necessary oversight and safeguards for children in the congregate care programs. This legislation is a critical step in ensuring that vulnerable youth in Utah receive the protections that they deserve. The reality that we're facing is this: a child placed in juvenile justice system has more rights and protections than a child placed in congregate care facility. This is a disturbing fact that should concern every one of us. In the juvenile justice system, a child is guaranteed due process, access to an attorney, oversight from a judge, meeting with clergy, basic communications with their parents, and oftentimes a guardian ad litem. Yet in congregate care facilities, these fundamental rights are stripped away. In the past 3 years, I've represented 2 families who've lost children in congregate care facilities. Both children repeatedly complained of serious health issues, only to be ignored. They had no one to turn for help, no attorney, no judge, no guardian ad litem, no ombudsman, oftentimes with the facility telling the parents that they're faking, that the child is faking. These children, they died alone in private prisons without their families, without anyone to protect them, with no one listening to them. And I brought an example. This is Taylor Goodridge. You'll hear from her father.
So I'll need you to stay on the microphone because we have some people participating virtually. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult.
The first phone board shows one of Taylor's supervisors saying, "Hey, Taylor's really sick. We need to take her to a hospital." They ignored her. That was 3 days before she died. Then we have more text the next day where they're like, "Taylor looks really bad." And then we have the final text the day she died where her where the facility medical providers were saying, we're sure it's just psychosomatic, but she does look kind of bad. She died on the floor of the hallway in this facility without ever going to a hospital. You're going to hear from Ms. Silvers, whose son expressed very similar health concerns. It's all documented. They allowed him to die alone. We cannot allow a system where a child is better off being in juvenile detention than in a private congregate care facility. And this is an indictment of our current system and is an urgent call for action. Senate Bill 297 is not just good policy, it's a moral imperative. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the loss for that family and for those loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Katie Silver is next.
Chairperson Weiler, members of the Judiciary Committee, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Katie Silvers. My youngest son, Biruk, died just 3 months ago here in Utah while in a residential treatment facility. He was only 17 years old. We adopted Biruk and his brother from Ethiopia when he was 7. In Africa, Biruk lived on the streets, suffering from malnutrition, neglect, illness, and abuse, and yet despite these hardships, he was the happiest, most loving boy. His smile lit up every room he entered, and his eyes sparkled like diamonds. He was hysterically funny, mischievous, and endlessly curious. He was my best friend, my shadow, my everything. He would always say, "Mom, you just get me." And I did. I fought hard for him to be seen, heard, and understood. I wanted him to know his worth. It was he and I against the world. As he entered his teenage years, he became more impulsive and vulnerable to peer pressure. Coupled with his significant learning differences and ADHD, local schools couldn't meet his needs, so the educational consultant recommended Discovery Ranch. He had never been in trouble with the law, was not violent, and excelled in school. We wanted a safe, protective place where he could focus on school and heal. We were assured this was the right place for him. We saw this as an investment in his future, a chance to address his past so he could live with peace, and the tools to succeed. Within days of arriving, Biruk told us that he had been choked and tackled. The therapists present had not reported this to us. They explained he had tried to take a book without permission, and in the struggle, they all accidentally fell. A book. Books were his therapy, his self-soothing, and yet he was denied them and physically restrained. I grew really concerned. Many months passed, and he was regressing. We became alarmed when he shared that he and others were engaging in a game where they would choke themselves multiple times per day to escape his reality there. To our shock, the therapist dismissed this as a normative behavior. He then started an antidepressant, and we saw a change in him that didn't reflect our son. We told the therapist we were concerned for his well-being and that we were going to discharge him soon. Then, on November 5th at 2 p.m., the phone rang. The therapist's voice was frantic. "Something horrible has happened. They are working on him now." I screamed, "Why wasn't he being watched? That's why he is there." Then they hung up. Minutes went by and my husband called again, and that's when we heard the words that shattered our world. Our little boy, our light, was gone. We learned after his death that for 2 weeks prior, Biruk had told his psychiatrist he was suicidal with a detailed plan to hang himself with a belt. It was documented and dated in the doctor's medical notes, and no one told us. On our call with the psychiatrist on October 31st, I voiced my concerns and again was told nothing about his suicidal intent. I sent 25 emails in those final days because something just did not feel right. Yet I was reassured nothing was amiss. The day before he died, his therapist had conducted a suicide assessment and cleared him, and yet again, we were never told about it. For weeks, he voiced his pain to those he trusted, and yet no staff told us or took further action to help him. Had we known, we would have been there. We were never given the chance to save our son. The Utah Department of Health and Human Services issued the facility a conditional license for failing to follow suicide prevention protocols, supervision, and more. And yet Discovery Ranch is back to business as usual while we pay the price forever. The staff and psychiatrists knew my son had a detailed plan to hang himself, yet he was allowed access to belts, something so simple and so easy to remove. Why are belts even accessible in a residential mental health facility that claims to treat suicidal teens? That fateful day, he died from someone's belt, and worse, he was unaccounted for and unsupervised for 30 minutes. He was coming home. He had an amazing future ahead of him, and now he is forever 17. Our home is silent. Our hearts are broken. I keep waiting to wake up from this nightmare because this should not have happened. I am no different than any of you. None of us are immune. If your child ever needed help, wouldn't you want to know that they were receiving the best care possible? Wouldn't you want facilities held to the highest standard? I am angry that I am here today. I am angry that laws either don't exist or aren't followed. My son's death was preventable, and the fact that I'm here means we are not doing enough, and we must do better. Biruk was not a problem child. He was a child who had suffered immense trauma. He was promised safety, understanding, and therapy so he could heal, and instead he was failed. Imagine for just a moment what it's like to be me right now. My son is dead. His siblings will never see their little brother again. His cries for help were ignored, and we, his parents, were left in the dark. Can you imagine knowing that if they had just removed the belts, supervised him properly, reported his suicidal intent, or allow a simple phone call home, he might still be alive today? This is what we live with every minute of every day, that this was a preventable tragedy. We brought him to America for a better life, not to lose his life. He was safer in a third world country than he was in care in Utah. Think about that. Utah must do better. Basic protections should have always been in place. This should be the standard of care, not an afterthought. Senator McKell's bill will be a stronger law that ensures not only that our children thrive in treatment, but they survive it. I am confident that had this bill been in place all along, my son would be here today. This was not supposed to be our story. I don't want it to be yours. We must do better for our children, for Utah, and for Biruk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Katy.
All right, who's next, Senator McKell?
We're going to have Finn Poole
Finn Poole.
from Berkeley.
Finn, I hope you hit the slopes while you're here.
I hope so.
Okay. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Finn Poole, or Finn Richardson, as you might know. I'd like to thank everyone for their time, first of all. As a survivor turned advocate, I'm deeply concerned about the ongoing abuse within what we call the troubled teen industry. And because of this, I strongly believe that SB297 is a critical step towards ensuring the safety of people who experience the same things I did. I want to tell you a little more about my situation. I come from Washington, D.C., and I never had many problems as a child. I was sent to Elevations RTC here in Utah from August 2021 to March of 2022. I was kidnapped from a center in Texas where I was sent to Elevations on the basis of so-called mental health issues, though later on these were proven to be unfounded through an independent medical evaluation I took. At Elevations, I experienced frequent abuse. I was often treated as subhuman, and anything I said was treated with skepticism. At a certain point, when I came out about a sexual assault I experienced from the person that sent me to Elevations, I was told that I was making it up and doing it for attention. As well, when I began a legal case to begin my freedom at Elevations, I was placed in solitary confinement and accused of having a sickness so they could keep me as long as they want. As well, at Elevations, I experienced multiple violations, not only to my legal rights, where I was refused an attorney, but also my religious rights, where I was refused to see my rabbi as a Jewish American. Since my time at Elevations, I've noticed the effects it has had on my mental health. I had little opportunities to go outside, connect with the real world, and returning to my life where I essentially disappeared off the face of the planet. Because of what's happened to me and my experiencing the effects of other people, I'm urgently calling for stronger oversight and regulation of these programs. In 2021, SB Bill 127 passed, which did mark an important step in addressing the issues of the troubled teen industry here in Utah. But despite this, tragic events have still happened, and children are continuing to die. I'm very moved by the statements of Ms. Silvers and what's happened to her, which is a case I know, unfortunately, all too well. Because of this, I'm pushing forward SB Bill 297, which introduces crucial measures that improve accountability and strengthen protections for people that experienced what I did. I'm urging the committee today to pass this bill and take the necessary steps to push this forward. Reform is needed to talk about the troubled teen industry, and it affects Utah as a whole. I thank you for your time, and I hope that you hear my consideration.
Thank you, Finn.
Thank you, Chair. So Dean Goodridge will be next, father of Taylor Goodridge. Thank you, Finn.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Dean Jeffries L. Goodridge. I was the father of Taylor Levin Goodridge. Taylor was a Native American of the Stillaguamish tribe of Indians. She was born July 15, 2005, in Arlington, Washington. She was the first female in our family since the 50s. Taylor was a very compassionate and spirited 17-year-old, love for her family, especially animals. Taylor was always there to lend a hand for anybody that needed help, especially when it came to animals and other stuff. Affectionately, she was known as Boo or Tay-Tay. She had an infectious smile, loved to laugh. She loved Disney, Lilo and Stitch. She spent the summers with her family, all of us, which Taylor could never get enough of. Tragically, Taylor died December 20th, 2022. She passed away due to a life-threatening and preventable illness. She complained for several days. Staff saw her vomiting, claimed that she was faking it. She then collapsed and died of an easily treatable infection. She never had the chance to go to a doctor's, hospital, emergency, or anything for this illness. Taylor did struggle with some issues, which she took it upon herself with a counselor from our family, it's tribal counselor. They helped her pick out Diamond Ranch Academy. I was very sad when Taylor was leaving. She was kind of the glue into the family, but she knew she needed help, so she went. We visited Taylor the month before she died. She looked 100% healthy. She looked really just amazing. And then a month later, her appendix exploded and she passed. The troubled teen industry is a network of unregulated and residential facilities that claim to help struggling teens, but often rely on abusive practices, neglect, and control tactics that can last harming on young people in care and their families. The industrial is estimated to utilize $23 billion a year in public taxpayer dollars. 120 to 200 youths find themselves funneled into these programs annually. To this day, previous workers from Diamond Ranch have been directly involved in her death, are working within these facilities with teens. Many of the same people who allowed my daughter to die alone now work at other facilities. Her tragic death highlighted the need for better protection for vulnerable youths in the TTI facilities. Taylor's legacy of kindness and her boundless love for animals lives on, inspiring all of us to do more to protect both the vulnerable and the voiceless. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, and I'm very sorry for your loss, Dean. I'm very, very, very sorry.
So Caroline Lorson, survivor, 1111 Media.
Caroline, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chairman Weiler and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Caroline Lorson, and I'm the Strategic Advocacy Lead for 1111 Media Impact. I am also a survivor of the troubled teen industry as well. I was sent to a facility when I was 14 years old. I was there for 2.5 years. The last time I was at this Capitol, I was testifying in support of Senate Bill 127 in 2021. Which was the first attempt at preventing the rampant child abuse, neglect, and deaths in youth residential facilities in Utah. This very committee questioned again and again if Senate Bill 127 would go far enough to address these issues. And we now know, while it was a foundational effort that was needed, we now know that that bill did not go far enough and that we do, in fact, need to do more. You know, I think it's important that we ensure that any parent who makes that impossible decision to send their child away, sometimes thousands of miles away from their home, to a facility, that they don't receive that absolutely crushing call that their child has died. And so it's time for us to do something more, and I believe that Senate Bill 297 is that next step. Since 2021, 7 children came to Utah for help, and they died. All of these deaths were needless, were preventable, and also in direct correlation to the culture that has been allowed to persist in youth residential facilities in Utah. This room today is full of folks from this industry who have a strong financial incentive to oppose any regulation. Many of them wearing green ribbons today for mental health awareness, and the irony is not lost on me. As we've heard today from families whose children have received anything but care. I want to emphasize that our only goal is to ensure that no other parent receive that life-shattering call that their child has died in treatment. The provisions of 297, Senate Bill 297, are critical in addressing these ongoing issues. This bill will strengthen the oversight and accountability of these facilities by creating the Congregate Care Admissions Committee, Advisory Board, which ensures that only children who truly need intensive care are placed in these programs. It will also establish an ombudsman to provide a crucial independent oversight mechanism to investigate complaints and ensure swift action is taken when children's safety is at risk. Many of the parents that you heard from today, in my private conversations with them, they have told me that when they tried to advocate for their children, they were somewhat stonewalled. And so they wish that they would have had a resource. They wish they would have had someone to go to advocate for their child. Again, there were so many warning signs that happened along the way. Had they had someone to contact, they wouldn't be here. None of us would be here. Additionally, the bill also defines critical incidents, which I think is a very important factor. Right now, the industry is required to report critical incidents within a certain amount of time to the Office of Licensing, but there's actually not a definition for what a critical incident is. So to my understanding, this is just up to the discretion of the facility with what they report or don't. So I think that's a very crucial aspect of this. Senate Bill 297 is a necessary step to prevent further tragedy. It will hold facilities accountable, safeguard children, and restore trust in a system that has failed so many. I urge this committee to support Senate Bill 297. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. All right.
That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. I want everybody to listen carefully. Lacey, I need you to listen too. I'd like everyone who is here to speak against the bill, only against the bill, to raise your hand, and that includes online. So I've got, hold on, raise them high so I can see them. You're not going to speak if I can't see your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Do we have any online? What's that? Okay, everyone online, put your hands down. Are you really all here to speak against the bill? So, okay. Well, I mean, look at it. It's 9 o'clock. We've got like 7 more bills on our agenda. I've got 9 people online and 7 in person who just want to speak against it, and so I'm going to have to limit that. So I'm going to let 4 people speak against it. We'll do 3 in person and 1 online, and I'll let 4 additional people speak in favor of it. So, Senator McKell, why don't you vacate your chair? Yes. Sure. I didn't see any lights before, but before you leave, Senator McKell,
Yeah.
Senator Musselman has a question.
I'll be really fast, Mr. Chair. I recognize there's a time crunch, so I'm going to speak quickly and hopefully get answers fairly quickly. Lines 142 and 143, Civil Penalty Fund. Can you just kind of walk me through the purpose of that and give me some greater guidance on it?
Yeah, so this is a fund that actually licensing is asked for. You'll see online 139, for example, was assist individuals affected by a shutdown of a facility. When we have a shutdown of a facility, the state steps in, and we have had facilities shut down when they've been investigated. We wanted to have it a restricted account. When a fine or penalty is levied, we want to be able to use that restricted account to do that. And you'll see allowable activities, and that's why it calls out federally and state-approved plan up above. So those allowable activities are up above. For further clarification, I would direct you to Amanda Slater or Shannon at the department, but that was at their recommendation.
Okay, and secondly, if you go down the lines at 910, 911,
Yep.
and 912, this is just the restriction as it pertains to, I'm trying to get to it real quick. If there's any investigation that I think the verbiage was, they wouldn't be allowed to work, say,
Yeah.
there's been a subject of investigation for sexual misconduct, whether criminal or civil, within 3 years from the date of the office conducts the background check. So
Yep.
they wouldn't be able to work in the field, they wouldn't be able to, what would happen there?
Yeah.
Because anybody can charge anything,
Yep.
right?
So let me address that. So in the substitute that I'm going to ask this committee to adopt, we've changed that language a little bit. So in the substitute, it'll actually be on 913 through 916. And that now is going to read an applicant for congregate care program and is subject to an open investigation for non-criminal findings or a supported non-criminal finding within 3 years from the date on which the office conducts the background check. So we actually took the DCFS language. That's a term of art, and last night my drafting attorney and Amanda Slater worked that language out. That's language that I know several of you expressed concern on. I'd still like to have a chance to make sure we continue to work on that language as it moves forward, but that language has changed to kind of the term of art from DCFS language, but that's language that I think we still need to continue to work on.
Hey, Senator McKell, would you like to move the sub?
Yes, I would move that we delete in body and title Senate Bill 297 and replace it with first substitute Senate Bill 297.
All right, any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Chair rules that passes unanimously.
One last question,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, and then I still, even with the clarified language, there still gives me a little bit of pause, so I'll talk with you offline about that. But the ombudsman isn't necessarily meant, I think it's a good idea because I have some general experience with what happens with investigators within DOPL, and I don't know how they would handle emergency circumstances, but is it meant to handle an emergency circumstance or simply to field questions, clarifying questions from maybe parents or guardians?
It could be both, and some of those concerns you saw from Intermountain today, coordinating with the facility where kids have been dropped off, that ombudsman could field calls from providers, similar to what Caroline said as she testified, those parents that feel like they're stonewalled, they could reach into the ombudsman. We also have whistleblower language in the bill. If you saw some of these slides that were out in front of you where some staffers were concerned about a child in a program, those staffers would also have an ability to call the ombudsman.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, why don't we have you vacate your chair, Senator McKell. So the chair that Senator McKell was just sitting in, that's those in favor of the bill. We're only going to take the 4, and the chair next to where he just vacated is those against the bill. So why don't you come up and sign in while the other person's testifying? And Senator Musselman, could you chair for me for a moment? I got to step out for a court hearing.
All right, we're going to get going fairly quickly. We are going to put you on a timer. I'm going to start with 2 minutes. If we can keep it under that, that would be great. But make sure you state your name, who you represent, and sign the board. Go ahead.
All right. Let me sign this first.
I'm going to start the timer. I'll let you know it's going, so
Okay.
go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Justin Levine. I'm representing myself today. Thank you, everyone, for hearing me out in my story. I wouldn't say I'm a survivor. I'd say I'm a thriver. And I also would say that many of you here have seen some of the fruits of my labor in different capacities. You might not know me today or in previous time, but I think after you'll understand kind of my full journey here. So I grew up in South Florida. I had debilitating anxiety going into into high school. I was a straight A student up until that point, nice kid, lots of friendly interactions, and things were going really well. But anxiety struck, and it completely debilitated my functionality. I shut down. I wasn't able to engage. We tried everything. My family did everything to support me. Outpatient therapy. I went to every clinic in the state of Florida to try to figure out what would work, and none of it was enough. So ultimately, my parents made the tough decision to send me to a wilderness program in North Carolina, and then out here to Utah for a program. That program, I would testify to say it saved my life. I would say that it saved so many other lives. I would say for each unfortunate victim, there are thousands and thousands of beneficiaries to programs here in the state of Utah. I would say that my life was going to end in one of two ways prior to a program. I was either going to die or I was going to lead to my own destruction, and that was inevitable in my mind. When I graduated from the program, I had a new sense of hope.
I'm sorry, but
That's
you
fine.
got 10 seconds if you could
10
wrap up.
seconds. All this to say, I helped the BYU women's team and all the Olympian runners here in the state. I've given everything I have to give back to the state, and I hope you consider my story. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, state your name, who you represent. Make sure you sign the board. Time is yours.
Good morning, committee members. Nate Crippes with the Disability Law Center. As Ms. Lorson mentioned, when SB297 was before this committee a few years ago, many committee members asked if it went far enough. Our comments at that time said that it didn't. We urge you to go further. We think this SB297 is a really good step moving things forward. As the state's protection and advocacy agency, we certainly see lots of abuse and neglect of people with disabilities throughout the state. Many other facilities of those with adults have similar regulations. There's no reason why we can't put these in place to at least start to protect kids in Utah. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna just for a moment. How many? No, you're fine, sir. Thank you. How many in lines is for the bill? Just raise your hand. One. I can't see. We're only going to do who's standing right here. No one else. So who's for? Raise your hand high. Who's against? Okay. And out of you two, for or against the bill? For or against? You for?
Against.
Okay. Okay. I'm only going to allow 2 more against and 2 more for. So you guys work it out in line. These 2 are against. So whoever's in line that's for, that's where we're going to go. So go ahead, state your name, who you represent.
My name's Scott Dixon. I'm a parent of a survivor who was saved with the assistance of residential treatment program. She's with me right here. My daughter's junior year in high school was filled with anxiety and depression, a lot of perfectionism. She's a 4.0 student, a cheerleader, and had many scholarship offers on the table. However, the day after Christmas, her junior year, she attempted suicide and found herself in the hospital waiting for us to find the right place to receive help for her. We found that place in a residential treatment facility here in Utah. She was there for almost 5 months. She refers to her treatment team as her bonus family. They later attended her high school graduation, 12 of them. They later attended her wedding reception. Their intention and their heart and their training saved my daughter. And Senator Baldry, you may not remember this, but you helped present a congressional award to her for the awareness to suicide and depression in the state of Utah. She has met with governors, she has met with congressmen, and she would not be here if it weren't for residential treatment facilities who are already very regulated. And I'm not saying that this bill is bad, but I'm saying there are parts in it that need to be fully baked.
Thank you, sir. And go ahead.
I am that daughter. My name is Meg Ortiz. I want to first acknowledge that the green ribbons on our chest are not us fighting anything for anyone. It is us reminding everyone in this room that we are fighting for the same thing. We are fighting for the safety and protection of the children, of adults as well, because we're not just children need help, adults need help in facilities as well. We are merely saying that there are a few aspects of this bill that strongly need to be readdressed. Like my dad said, I genuinely would not be here without the help of these facilities and the family that is formed for me. And I know without a doubt that there are countless people who could stand behind me and say the same thing. My heart breaks for the families who have lost their loved ones in these unfortunate situations. I'm aware that adjustments need to be made. I'm just asking for another view to be seen at the same time. We cannot afford for the expenses of these facilities to be overseen for the sake of saving lives, which I will say one life is too many lost. But some of these changes restrict families the ability to get the help that their children need. There needs to be a balance. There needs to be some in between, because the black and white of the changes that we're trying to make just is not the answer.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and allow who's the next three in line, but I apologize. The last one in line, I have to cut it off right here. So we're only doing these two and this one gentleman in the white shirt. I've still got to go online too. I'm sorry. All right. Let's just go with these two. So what, the other gentleman sitting down? Okay. All right. I'll allow it. Go ahead. State your name, who you represent. I'm going to have to cut time down. We're pushing up against a hard stop. So you got a 1 minute and 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Dear Senator Ryler and committee members, my name is Caden Sagendorf, and I'm a human rights advocate here representing the foster care community. I'm here in strong support of Senate Bill 297, which seeks to strengthen oversight and regulation of Utah's congregate care industry. As both a survivor and advocate, I'm deeply concerned about the ongoing abuse within residential treatment programs. SB 297 is a crucial step toward ensuring the safety and well-being of vulnerable children in care. For 5 years, I was placed in various congregate placements from residential treatment centers to group homes. In these placements, I endured severe psychological, physical, and emotional abuse. Despite repeated attempts to these injustices, my concerns were deeply diminished. Instead of receiving appropriate care, I was labeled as incompetent and heavily medicated with antipsychotic drugs, an approach designed to maintain my dependency on these facilities rather than foster true healing. Had measures like Congregate Care Admissions Committee and whistleblower protections proposed in this bill been in place, I would have not been subjected to 5 years of dehumanizing treatment, nor would I have lost critical years of personal development. These experiences have lasting effects on my mental and emotional well-being, underscoring the urgent need for stronger oversight of these programs. While passage of SB 127 in 2021 was a step forward, reports of abuse and deaths make it clear that further action is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Layne Bagley with The Voice Utah. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson and committee members. And to all of the parents here that have lost children in programs, I just want to share with you, as an industry, our deepest sympathies. We're truly sorry for the losses that you've suffered. As a congregate care industry, only having since Wednesday to become familiar with this bill, we have some huge concerns with and are opposed to some of the language in this current draft. The floor sponsor was gracious enough to meet with us yesterday and hear our concerns, and has assured us that he recognizes that the current draft does not accurately reflect all of the true intent of this bill. and that it could have unintended consequences. He has assured us that he will collaborate with the industry to see that the language is changed to address the problems that need to be solved while eliminating unintended consequences of this current draft. We look forward to working with the sponsor and accomplish that goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this will be our last in person, then we'll take one online. Sorry about that.
Good afternoon, Senator Weiler and committee members. My name is Natalie Clark, and I spent 6 years in the foster care system, and many of that throughout congregate care facilities. I'm here solely to speak to support this bill as a young person from the foster care system. Oftentimes, the congregate care facilities are overused for our population, and we simply don't need to be in these facilities. I am one of those young people that was put in facilities for long periods of time. I didn't have the mental health needs, I didn't have the substance use needs to put me into these mental health facilities, into these substance use facilities, and that wasted a bed and space for other young people who direly needed that care. I was a waste of space in these places. This care is necessary for many young people. I'm here to advocate to make sure that that care is only provided to those who need it, because it's just a waste of your money, our time, and everybody's effort. I'll keep it short. I would just really like you to support the oversight and ensuring that young people don't enter these programs that don't need to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being succinct. We're going to go online to Rivka Bier. Rivka, if you could turn on your camera and tell us what county you live in.
I actually live in Naples, Florida, so Collier County, Florida. I'm a parent of a child who spent 2 years in Utah and is only alive and not in jail because of those 2 years in Utah. I'm so sorry for the parents who've lost children. I got phone calls of attempted suicides. I live there, and I don't pretend to understand the pain of getting the phone call that it's over. I do feel that it's important to acknowledge that the children are sent to these treatment centers because we're out of options, right? And so when I think about limiting them to the point of parents not having these options, that means we watch our children die, or maybe they go to jail if we're lucky, but otherwise they're going to die. Their behaviors are so extreme that we need outside help. So while my child is thriving, he's about to graduate high school, I don't need the program anymore, but I think, where does the next generation of parents send their children who struggle that much? My child spent 17 months at Discovery Ranch and 6 at Three Peaks Ascent. Both programs saved his life. We were included in treatment plans. We were included in updates. Every incident, we would get a phone call when it was available, but texts constantly to let us know where he was and at what point and how critical. His safety and the safety of others was paramount in every discussion, in everything I observed, every time I went there. I also, my son's at school and opted to let me speak for him, but he is a huge supporter. He's an advocate for these children and for the programs. He plans on attending a program in June to speak to parents and children in favor of residential treatment centers and to explain to them from the child's perspective of why it's so important. And he shares how being there is hard because the change is hard and they don't want to do the work. They don't get there because they're outstanding members of society in that moment. And once he figured out and took ownership of his own growth and his own behavior, the boy is thriving. He's been accepted to 5 mechanical engineering schools. He has scholarship offers all over the place and acknowledges over and over again that he would not be here. He would be in the ground if it weren't for these 2 programs who saved his life.
All right, thank you very much for your time today. I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the committee for action. Senator Fillmore.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Appreciate that. I'd like to make a motion that we favorably recommend first substitute Senate Bill 297, and I'll speak to that.
All right, please proceed.
Thanks. I think the bill is not yet ready to pass the body. I think the sponsor knows it's not yet ready to pass the body, but we got about a week left for this to bake, and I think that moving this out of committee and to the floor is really a favorable recommendation on the process to let those negotiations continue, and I feel confident that the sponsor can work with stakeholders to come with a good solution before this comes up for a floor on the vote for a vote on the floor next week or the following.
All right, I have 4 lights, so we'll next go to Senator Musselman. 5 lights. I'm sorry. We'll go to Brammer.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, on a personal note, you know, I watched my older brother. You know, I was his Narcotics Anonymous sponsor starting at age 9. You know, riding my bike down to the Provo Marriott to help him, and I watched him in and out of these congregate cares. You know, I think that, you know, we've heard some of the worst stories. We've heard some of the best stories, probably more of the worst than the best today because of the subject matter. But I want to say that, you know, there were some where he found mentorship, where he found clean environments without drugs that were necessary, where there was a removal from bad peer groups that needed to happen, where, you know, my parents who were desperate for answers, you know, found, you know, some semblance of hope in the congregate care areas. But there were others where he was subjected to psychological and physical abuse, where he was humiliated, where there were public confessions, where he was isolated, and where it was not ideal. And so, you know, I want those that are here in support of the congregate care groups to understand, you know, this is not banning congregate care groups. You know, and there's a place for congregate care and for the troubled youth space, and I see that. But sometimes the tough love gets a little too tough, and we have to be careful that we could go too far. So the idea that there would be a committee that provides best practices, or an ombudsman that someone can consult with, or a whistleblower protection, these are not overly onerous things. You know, these are things that are meant to protect the children that are in this when, you know, the tough love gets a little too tough. And it's hard because, you know, teenagers get manipulative and they lie and they do stuff, especially in these facilities, and especially when they're avoiding, you know, drug use and coming down from that and everything. And so, you know, I'll be supportive of the bill. I think there's a little bit more work to be done on it. But I want you to know that this is not a full condemnation of the congregate care community. This is meant to provide some safeguards and a helpline out. And I don't think that that's a threat to you. I think that's just a safety piece. And there's other things in the bill that we can continue to work on. But I just wanted to kind of say there's good and bad in these. And we're trying to avoid the worst and keep the best. And this should not be seen as a full condemnation of everything. It's let's protect the kids when they need it. So I'll be supportive.
Thank you. Senator Baldry.
I'd just like to echo some of the sentiments that have been stated by my colleagues, but to say that we need to be careful when we regulate industry, we need to make sure that our approach is tailored so that we don't harm those who are doing good. And that, yes, we want to catch the bad actors, but we absolutely need to tailor this bill to be very specific so that we don't shut down good businesses because of over-regulation. Heaven knows we need more good places in this space and industry. And so with that, I would like to compliment the sponsor who has been responsive to some of the concerns I've brought up with him, and I trust that moving forward, he will do so. But again, I just caution that anytime we add regulation, we need to make sure that we are promoting the right things and not discouraging the good actors.
Thank you. Senator Cullimore.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I won't add anything, but just, again, intend to vote yes, but hope that the bill can be worked on to address some of those concerns raised by previous comments. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Senator McKell, would you like to sum?
Yeah. Let me sum. And is that turn? Thank you for being here, and I appreciate those who have testified and having the industry here. You do have my commitment. We are going to continue to work on this issue. I'll tell you one of the parts of the bill that I am still concerned with. I think the information received today from Intermountain is really, really a hard one to swallow. I think we have a serious problem. But what I don't want to do is disincentivize taking kids when they really need that high level of care. And when I look at some of the language that we still need to work through, we need to work through that portion of the bill, and I intend to do that. But I appreciate the opportunity to work on this. This was a bill, it was priority bill. I tried to have this out a month and a half ago, and it just didn't turn out that way. Sometimes that's the way it happens in the legislature. But I appreciate the motion, thank you, and look forward to continue working on it.
Thank you. Senator Fillmore, would you like to sum?
Waive.
All right, all in favor of the motion to favorably recommend first substitute Senate Bill 97 with the Senate Bill 297 with the understanding the sponsor said that he'll continue to work on it, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair rules that passes unanimously, 8-0. All right,